All right, welcome to it, everyone. It's the Donovan Live Postgame Show on a Tuesday night, almost on a Monday night. It's a Tuesday night here at WKYC.com on Facebook Live and on YouTube. I'm Dave DeNatale along with Jim Donovan. The Donovan Live Postgame Show is presented by our friends at Master Pizza. Remember, download the Master Pizza app and earn those pizza points today. That's Master Pizza. Taste above all. Jimmy, I had anticipated that this would be the first chance I had to really talk to you face-to-face and talk about that Browns game and try to reevaluate and look back at it. But we're going to have time for that another time because we all woke up today just to the horrible, horrible news. Our good friend Fred McLeod, the television voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers, passed away last night at the age of 67. And I thought you had the best line during your tribute at 6 o'clock tonight on Channel 3 News. We put that, by the way, at WKYC.com. He was a wine and gold winner.
Yeah, he really was. He loved the Cavs. I mean, he was he went through so many different stages with the Cavs, which happens when you're with a team for a long period of time. I mean, you're not going to win the title every year, and there are going to be different stages. And Fred really was in different stages. So when he joined the Cavs, LeBron was still there, and this is the first time. And then they got close, and then LeBron left. And you go all the way back down, remember? And, the Cavs went all the way back down. And Fred never lost a beat.
No.
I mean, Fred always looked at every game starts 0-0, and you never know what's going to happen, okay? Even though the Cavs were in a predicament of trying to replace LeBron James and trying to rebuild the team. And he went through that rebuilding process with Kyrie Irving. And then LeBron comes back. And then, he, as a broadcaster, gets to the ultimate peak, and that is winning the championship.
I always thought that was one of the things I was very impressed with. It's not easy. I'm telling you this as somebody who once was the play-by-play announcer of a team that lost 44 straight games. I certainly don't have to tell this gentleman what it's like to have to deal with teams that aren't very good. It's not easy. And the Cavs that first year after LeBron left lost 24 or 26 or whatever games in a row was an NBA record. It's not easy to still make people want to stay active and stay interested, involved in the team, and he did. And I really felt he recognized, Fred did, that when Kyrie Irving came to town, even though the Cavs still weren't very good, that they had something in Kyrie and that he was worth getting excited about if you were a Cavs fan, and that this was going to ultimately lead to something special, not knowing that, of course, that LeBron was going to come back. But I always admired him for that because it's not easy to do, to try to put a smile on a tough game.
Yeah, I can remember it. No, it isn't. And I can remember, personal experience, like you said. But I can remember one time when Tom Hamilton first came to town, and the Indians were not good at that point in time. And he and Herb Score were calling the Indians games on the radio together. And I remember it was like the last game of the season. And ironically, it was like on a Tuesday night, which was strange, but the schedule fell that this was their last game of the season. And the Indians, I think, lost about 105 games.
Yes.
And they lost that night, too. And I had them on the 6 o'clock news before their last game that year, and they came on the news, and I said, guys, I don't know how you do it, Little did I know I would live it, in football fashion. It isn't easy. It really isn't easy, and but you love doing it, and you have a job to do. And Dick Enberg used to tell me that when I was doing games on NBC, and they would have kind of a training camp for the announcers, just before the season would start, to tell you how NBC wanted to do the games and go over rule changes and how the format was going to be during games. Dick Enberg once told me, you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
And you never know who's going to come out. There might be some guy that you never expected to even play in the game. And he might come out and block a kick or hit a winning field goal or intercept a pass or something like that. So you always have to go into the game with an open mind.
Yes.
That no matter what the odds are, that something special could happen. You could go into a baseball game and you could see a guy pitch a perfect game.
Right.
And you could go into a basketball game and see somebody hit, and Fred did many times, someone hit a buzzer beater.
Right.
Something like that. And Fred was, he really was he was a great pro, and he was a tremendous ambassador for the Cavaliers. I mean, he was a wine and gold guy.
He was, yeah, absolutely.
And he loved doing it, and he really connected. And he had a great chemistry with his partner, Austin Carr, who I'm sure we will have on Channel 3 News at 11 o'clock tonight. But I'm sure it's a tough day for him. And they spent a lot of time together, and he used to always call him Mr. Cavalier.
Yep.
And it's going to be very different and difficult for Austin now to approach the season.
I want to bring up something you said during the course of your feature tonight on Fred, because it's a small fraternity that you're in. There's only a handful of people that know what it's like to be the voice of a professional sports team in Cleveland. Yourself, Tom Hamilton, John Michael, Fred, Joe Tate.
Yeah.
There aren't many.
Sure.
You become kind of like a member of the family to sports fans.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the places that people come up and talk to you and the places that we take you as fans. We take our radios or we take our televisions or our, the games on our smartphones or whatever. We take you with us and you become part of us. And, you've had the Browns job now for 21 years. Right. Tom Hamilton's been with the Indians for 30 years. You become multi-generational.
Yeah.
And Fred was like that, 14 years with the Cavs or 15 seasons with the Cavs.
Yeah.
You're a family heirloom. You're passed down.
Yeah, it's something that really hit you, and I'm sure it hit Fred many, many times through the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, through the tough years and through the great years,
Mm-hmm.
the greatest of the great. I mean, Fred was able to call a player of generational, excellence in LeBron James, and I know he treasured that. Okay. But you go through, you meet so many people, and yet you don't meet them.
Yes.
But I was telling you a story before we came on that people come up to you, and a gentleman came up to me, I think it was at the Brown and Orange scrimmage, and he said to me, I work in a toll booth, and I take the Sunday shift because I get a little boost in pay, and I got kids getting ready to go to school and everything like that, and I want to put a little bit more away, so I take the higher shift, the tougher shift that gets the higher hourly rate. And I do that on Sundays because nobody wants that shift. And I listen to you, I bring the radio, and I listen to the game in the toll booth. And you just say to yourself, I mean, that's amazing.
Wow.
I mean, and I'm sure Fred had that, and Tom definitely has that. I mean, people are out in their yard, and they're in their car, and they're on the beach, and you're listening to the soundtrack. You become the soundtrack
of their lives.
Yes. Their lives.
And the fans' lives. I mean, to the point, like, we know you all have catchphrases that stand out. In Tom's case, swing and a drive. I mean, everybody goes swing and a drive. Freddie, you laid them out. I mean, Freddie had everything from the wine and gold winner to, convenient banking hours to, march down Euclid or.
Right.
And people still bring up with you Run, William, Run.
Right.
I mean,
and Gardaki's back
to punt. And now more recently, Chubba Wubba Hub. I mean, you've become part of the vocabulary of the Cleveland sports fan. It's something. Somebody was talking to me about this today. To Casey Cole, this feels like when we lost Casey Coleman and we lost Nev Chandler, and we obviously, in both their cases, they both had cancer, so it wasn't the shock that Fred is, but it kind of feels like in both their cases, it's a member of the family is bad.
Well, it is, yeah, and that's this was so sudden and so unexpected. I mean, and I said this on the news on both shows, the 6 and 7, but I mean, I was with Fred about less than 2 weeks ago. Fred was doing the Detroit Lions preseason games because Fred had the career in Cleveland, but he had a great career up in Detroit that was much longer and detailed even than his career here in Cleveland, which was tremendous, being the television voice of the Cavs. But he still had roots in Detroit and had a name in Detroit. And so he got the Lions preseason games. And, of course, the Browns played the Lions in the last game of the preseason. So he was here at First Energy Stadium. But he was in Berea every day leading up to that because Fred was a pro and he wanted to prep and do as much homework as he could, and he would call me here at Channel 3 at night.
Folks, I'm telling you, legendary. So I think it was like the Tuesday before the Thursday game. Jimmy's phone rings, and you ended up talking to him for 45 minutes or an hour, going through the Browns roster,
right, sure.
going through things to watch for, and I marveled at it. It's kind of sitting back going, wow, this is what it's like to be in the fraternity, and it's like that. And Fred was known. You call 82 games and you sit there and you think, well, it gets routine. Fred is legendary, and he's talked about this. You get on the plane if you're doing a game in Chicago, and your next, you got 2 days until your game in Milwaukee, or whatever, or Atlanta, and he's already looking on his iPad at the Hawks for the next game and writing down things and doing the preparation.
Right.
He may only have used 20% of it, but nobody was more prepared to call an NBA game than Fred McLeod.
Yeah, he really was. He was so into the fourth preseason game, which can get tedious.
Yes.
Okay? But he was so into the fourth preseason game, he intimidated me a little bit. And I'm going, man, I'm going to go home and study
wait a minute. Right.
I think I need to study a little bit more for this game. And I was glad I did, and it was good. And Fred was working with Chris Spielman.
Yes.
At the time. And it was really, I'm going to tell you, it was very, very touching to me. I mean, Fred and his wife were, are a great couple. And
yes.
Will always be known as a great couple. Beth, of course, well known around here in Cleveland, doing the weather at various stations. But I'll tell you what, Fred was her guy.
Yes.
I mean, she loved Fred McLeod, and that was her guy. And even that night, the fourth preseason game at First Energy Stadium, Beth, came running into the press box.
Yeah.
And she said, "Hey, Jim, how you doing?" I went, "Beth, it's good to see you." And she goes, "I'm going into the booth to be with Fred."
Yep.
And she was going into the big national television booth,
yes.
Which is huge, bigger than my first two apartments. And anyway, she was going into the booth, and I went, "Beth, you know what? He's not in that booth. He's down the hall in a different booth." So I, took her down, made sure that she knew what was going. But I mean, she was always at the Cavs games with him, and I'll tell you what, my heart goes out to Beth and Fred's kids.
Because you're right. I mean, she took the video that we have on our site, and I'm sure you've seen it on Twitter if you're on Twitter. She was the one who took the video of Fred and Austin calling that championship. She was with them out in California, and just seeing the emotion that Fred went through calling the championship. They were together. It reminds me, like Howard Cosell was always like that. He had his wife with him when he would go to do Monday night games. There was a partnership.
No, I'm probably not right on that. I know it was
something like now it's going to bother me, but Emmy.
That's it.
Emmy.
I knew it was something like that.
And
which he won many.
He did win many Emmys. But it was a partnership, and it was a love affair, and I always kind of thought it was the same thing. Like you'd see Fred, and nothing made Fred smile more than having Beth with him.
Speaking of Emmys, I think Fred won the Emmy this past year for play-by-play.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, because some of our people that also were at the Emmys had a chance to be there with him, and mentioned that in addition to everything else, he had just won Emmys, and it just leaves a void, and it's you sit there and you go, man, how can we watch watching Cavs games will never be the same.
Yeah, you're right, and it is difficult, and it was really difficult, and whoever goes into the job, it's difficult for them, and so you need to understand that. I mean, I always thought it was very, very difficult for Jim Mueller and Nev Chandler to replace Gibb. Gibb retired, okay? And then I thought it was next to impossible, and I thought Casey went into a very difficult situation when Nev passed, and Casey went in and did the games for 2 years before the team moved.
And was so and I thought Casey was so respectful of that of Nev, and respectful with Deke, and did as well with that as anybody could have done.
Now I had a break because the team broke and moved to Baltimore, and so there was a space there, and then was able to move into the booth and kind of do it seamlessly. So it's very, very tough, and it will be an adjustment for everybody, and I think we just remember the great moments. And Fred had the greatest. He had
the great. I mean,
and for guys like us that love doing that, I mean, that's our dream, to be able to call that kind of a moment and have it remain in history.
Think of it like this. Think of it like this. There's only a couple of people that have ever been able to call a Cleveland sports championship: Fred and John Michael for the Cavs, you know, you got to go in 1964. I think Gibb had just he was the voice of the
here,
Browns on the radio.
Yeah, Gibb was here.
And then, you know, in the 50s it was Kenny Coleman, Casey's dad, and then Jimmy Dudley with the Indians.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. I mean, because 1920 there was no radio calling the Cleveland Indians title in 1920. So you don't have there aren't many moments like that have been, you know, out there. So that's going to be a great way for people to look back and remember. And I'm thinking a lot about Dan Gilbert tonight. You know, the owner of the Cavaliers, who obviously has had a difficult offseason himself with the health problems and recovering from the stroke. His relationship with Fred McLeod goes back decades to when Fred was working in television and Dan was an intern for him. And then lo and behold, you know, Dan Gilbert becomes the owner of the Cavaliers and, you know, brings in Fred McLeod from Detroit. It's a partnership and a friendship that lasted decades.
Always be nice to your interns.
That's exactly right. And I always tell interns to this day, hey, you know, I'll leave you my number. You call, you know, when you get somewhere, you call me. You know, to stay in touch because you never know. You never know. Jimmy, I appreciate it. This was you know, a show we had to do tonight to talk about it. And again, I can't tell you enough. A Wine and Gold winner is the name of the story at WKYC.com. It's Jimmy's tribute to Fred McLeod. Watch it, read it. It's very, very good, and I think very, very appropriate on a day like this. We remind you the Donovan Live Postgame Show presented by Master Pizza. Download the Master Pizza app. Start earning those pizza points today.
Dino, just a point of reference.
Yeah.
Master Pizza was on Live on Lakeside.
So I heard. You know, Russ Mitchell grabbed me as he goes, hey Dino, he goes, Live on Lakeside, Master Pizza was on today.
Was on with about
All
20
right,
pizzas on
Lamarca, you got to come on. You got to come on this show. I mean, you have to come on this show. People need to see the pizza on the Donovan Live Postgame Show. I'm telling you, please. It's Master Pizza, taste above all, and we need Master Pizza above all right at this desk here for the Donovan Live Postgame Show. All right, we're back with you tomorrow. We'll start talking Browns and Jets. For Jimmy, I'm Dino. Thanks for watching the Donovan Live Postgame Show right here on WKYC's Facebook Live and YouTube.
All right.
All right.
Very good.